After the Battle of Endor in 4 ABY, the Galactic Empire did not collapse into a single Imperial Remnant. It collapsed into roughly 200. Every Moff who controlled a sector kept his sector. Every Grand Admiral who held a fleet kept his fleet. Ysanne Isard ran Imperial Intelligence out of a captured super star destroyer called Lusankya. Natasi Daala emerged from the Maw Installation with 4 uncatalogued star destroyers. Treuten Teradoc declared the Greater Maldrood. Delvardus declared the Eriadu Authority. Warlord Zsinj built a piracy state in the Quelii sector. The Empire became a hydra. Disney consolidated it into one old man on a single ship called Snoke. Hold that contrast in your head while I show you the receipts. The Empire-as-hydra is not a fan theory. It's not a Reddit thread. It's not an audience extrapolation. It's a documented commercial publishing arc that ran from May of 1991 through April of 2014, across 40 novels, 2 role-playing game sourcebook editions, and 8 named authors. The Hydra was the canonical post-Endor scenario for 23 consecutive years. Disney bought Lucasfilm in October of 2012, sat down with that 23-year body of work, and decided to throw it away. What they shipped in its place was a 60-something man in a hooded robe on a single throne on a single ship, killed in his chair in the second film by his apprentice. The Hydra is in the books. The man on the chair is in the films. The audience has been pointing at the books for 10 years. Start with the inheritance math, because the inheritance math is where the whole argument lives. West End Games published the Imperial Sourcebook in October of 1989. Author Greg Gordon. Hardcover first edition, framed in-universe as an intelligence report compiled for rebel leader Mon Mothma. The sourcebook is the foundational reference document for everything the Bantam Spectra novelists used between 1991 and 1999. And the sourcebook gives you, in plain text, the order of battle. 24 Imperial-class star destroyers per sector group. The Empire had thousands of sectors. Reasonable synthesis from the sourcebook's organizational tables and downstream West End Games supplements gives a peak Imperial Navy strength on the order of 25,000 Imperial-class star destroyers. The number varies. Some Bantam novels show smaller task forces. Some West End Games second edition supplements give higher counts. The exact verbatim figure isn't always identical across the corpus. But the most cited peak number that the Bantam authors were working from is 25,000 vessels at peak strength. 25,000 Imperial-class star destroyers. Each one of them at Endor had a captain. Every captain had ambitions. Every Moff who held a sector had a personal army stationed in that sector. Every Grand Admiral who held a sector group had 24 star destroyers on the books, reporting to him. When the Emperor died over Endor in 4 ABY, the chain of command above the Moff level disintegrated overnight. What was left was 25,000 opportunities for a captain or admiral or governor to declare himself the new center. That is what the Bantam authors inherited from West End Games. That is the structural raw material the EU was built on. And that is what Disney threw away. Now let's name the inheritors, because the warlords had names, and the names are documented. Ysanne Isard, Iceheart, daughter of Armand Isard, who is Palpatine's last internal security director. By the last 18 months of Palpatine's life, Ysanne had purged her own father and replaced him. She was director of Imperial Intelligence at Endor. When the Emperor died, she did what nobody in Imperial Center expected. She moved into the Imperial Palace, took the operations and the apparatus, and ran Coruscant as her personal warlord state for 3 years. She commanded the Lusankya, an executor-class super star destroyer, 19 kilometers from prow to engines, sister ship to Darth Vader's executor. The Lusankya's existence was kept secret by attributing all of its construction expenses to the executors. It was lowered onto Coruscant under a super frame of girders, disguised as a planetary shield generator, buried at the heart of the capital city as a secret prison facility. When the New Republic took Coruscant in 7 ABY, the Lusankya lifted off out of the city, taking buildings with it. Isard's first appearance is Michael Stackpole's X-Wing, Rogue Squadron, Bantam Spectra, January of 1996. Her arc runs across Wedge's Gamble, also 1996. The Krytos Trap, October 1996, where her bioweapon, the Krytos virus, engineered by General Evir Darakote, is revealed to be killing the non-human population of Coruscant in order to bankrupt the New Republic on Bacta. The Bacta War, February of 1997, where she seizes the Bacta production planet Thyphera and Rogue Squadron has to take it back. And Isard's Revenge, April of 1999, where it turns out the Isard everyone thought died was a clone, and the original is still operational. 5 novels of Warlord arc. That is not a side character. That is more screen time than Snoke got across 3 films, and Isard was a deputy under one emperor, not the leader of a galactic faction. Now multiply that by Natasi Daala, Tarkin's protege, promoted by him personally, given command of the Maw Installation, the black site Imperial research facility hidden inside a cluster of black holes, the place where the Empire built the Death Star, the Sun Crusher, and the World Devastators. Daala had 4 uncatalogued Imperial Star Destroyers stationed at the Maw, including the Gorgon as her flagship, the Hydra, and the Manticore. Nobody outside Tarkin's circle knew the fleet existed. When the Empire collapsed, Daala emerged from the Maw and started waging her own personal war against the New Republic. She lost the Hydra to the Sun Crusher superweapon early in her campaign. She attacked Akbar's homeworld of Mon Calamari and lost the Manticore to a Calamarian cruiser called the Startide on a kamikaze run. By the time Kevin Anderson finished his Jedi Academy trilogy in October of 1994, Daala had retreated to the Maw, lost half her fleet, and was preparing her next campaign. Anderson's Jedi Search, Bantam Spectra, March 1994. Dark Apprentice, Bantam Spectra, July 1994. Champions of the Force, Bantam Spectra, October 1994. 3 novels of Daala. Then, in 1995, Anderson published Darksaber, in which Daala does the thing the Empire needed someone to do. She convenes 13 of the most powerful warlords on a deep-core asteroid called Sauce Beacon. She locks the conference room. She releases a nerve gas only she and Pellaeon have been inoculated against. 13 warlords dead in an afternoon. The remaining Imperial military consolidates behind her and Pellaeon. That is how the Imperial Remnant gets built. Not by one antagonist. By one antagonist murdering 13 of her peers in a sealed room. Disney would have shot that scene on a soundstage. Disney did not shoot that scene. Disney shot a 60-year-old man in a hooded robe getting bisected by his apprentice in The Last Jedi. The Sauce Beacon massacre is the kind of scene that makes a story stick. 13 warlords in one sealed room. A single antagonist with 1 immunization and 1 canister of nerve agent. The camera tracking across the conference table as the warlords realize what's happening. Daala and Pellaeon are the only 2 figures standing when the camera completes the rotation. That is a 6-minute set piece. That is a centerpiece of a $30 million streaming episode. Andor would have shot that on a soundstage in Pinewood and won 3 Emmys for the production design. Disney instead spent its post-Endor screen time on Snoke gesturing at a throne for 90 seconds and dying 90 minutes later. The structural difference is not budget, it is choice. Now, Warlord Zsinj. Alston wrote him across X-Wing, Wraith Squadron, February 1998. Iron Fist, July 1998. Solo Command, February 1999. Pre-Endor, Zsinj had legitimately been granted the title of Warlord by Palpatine. The rank existed in the Imperial hierarchy, and Zsinj actually held it on paper. After Endor, he held it on his own authority. He based his operation in the Quelii sector, ran his territory as a piracy state, took commerce, intercepted Republic shipping, and built up a fleet around his flagship, the Iron Fist, a super star destroyer of the same class as the Lusankya and the Executor. In Iron Fist, Alston has Wraith Squadron infiltrate Zsinj's fleet, posing as a pirate gang called the Hawkbats. The mission is to find out what Zsinj is up to and what's coming next. What's coming next is Zsinj stealing a second superstar destroyer, the Razor's Kiss, from Kuat drive yards while it's still under construction. Wraith Squadron destroys the Razor's Kiss before it can be fully integrated. In Solo Command, General Han Solo's task force closes on Zsinj, including Rogue Squadron, Wraith Squadron, and the Mon Calamari cruiser Mon Ramonda. Zsinj fakes the destruction of the Iron Fist using Nightcloak technology and the wreckage of the Razor's Kiss to disguise his escape. He gets away. 3 Alston novels of 1 Warlord. That is more development than Hux got across an entire trilogy. In Solo Command, the 3rd Alston Zsinj novel, Zsinj is not even the villain Disney would have written. He doesn't broadcast manifestos. He doesn't speech at the camera. He runs a logistical operation. His core operating principle, on the page, is that the New Republic is fragile, and that warlord piracy can starve it without ever needing to confront it directly. The Hawkbat's raids are economic warfare. The Razor's Kiss theft is industrial sabotage. The Nightcloak deception is intelligence work. Alston was a former role-playing game designer like Stackpole and Anderson, and what he was doing on the page was running a 30 Game Master campaign with a recurring antagonist whose job was to be smart, evasive, and motivated. That is what the EU's Warlord-era prose looks like. That is the kind of antagonist the audience is asking for when they comment that the Imperial Remnant should have functioned more like a terrorist organization than a uniformed army. Zsinj was the answer the books gave them in 1998, and the answer is still on the shelf. And the warlords keep coming. Treuten Teradoc declares the Greater Maldrood. He rules it with his brother Kosh out of the Rivester system. The Greater Maldrood is the last surviving major Imperial splinter group, still operating in 13 ABY, finally dissolved when Kosh Teradoc is killed by Wraith Squadron in a follow-up Alston novel. Sander Delvardus declares the Eriadu Authority, a successor state centered on Tarkin's homeworld of Eriadu. He rules it from 4 ABY until his death in 11 ABY at Sauce Beacon. Artis Kane, Grand Moff of Oversector Outer, declares the Pentastar Alignment, the first formal warlord state to break off, founded almost immediately after Endor. It survives until 12 ABY, when Pelion's Imperial Remnant annexes it. Blitzer Harsk gives himself the title Supreme Warlord and runs an operation called Zero Command, also dead at Sauce Beacon. There are at least a dozen warlord states the EU named by 1999, and the Wikipedia Imperial Civil War entry describes the term warlord as applied rather indiscriminately to surviving leaders of the imperial military and political apparatus. 200 Moffs across the Empire's sectors, 12 named successor states by 1999 in the published novels, 13 warlords powerful enough to be invited to Sauce Beacon and killed there. And the through line across all of it, the rope that holds the Bantam EU's warlord era together, is Gilad Pellaeon. Pellaeon was captain of the Chimera under Thrawn in Zahn's 1991 trilogy. He outlived Thrawn. He held the remnant of the Imperial fleet together through the Imperial Civil War. He worked with Daala at Sauce Beacon, then worked around her after she resigned the Supreme Commander position. By the late Bantam period, he was Supreme Commander of the Imperial Remnant. In Timothy Zahn's Vision of the Future, published by Bantam Spectra in September of 1998 as the second half of the Hand of Thrawn duology, Pellaeon sits down with the New Republic Chief of State Pont Gaversum and signs a peace treaty. The Pellaeon-Gaversum Treaty, 19 ABY in the in-universe timeline, the formal end of the Galactic Civil War. It happens in a book published 26 years ago. The Empire and the New Republic both sign documents. They both stop fighting. Pellaeon is the architect. Pellaeon, by the way, is the one Warlord-era character Disney has actually used. He's been canonized into Disney continuity through the Mandalorian and Ahsoka-era material. The other warlords, Isard, Daala, Zsinj, Teradoc, Delvardus, Kane, Harsk, Disney has not touched. Pellaeon got brought across because Pellaeon worked alongside Thrawn, and Disney needed Thrawn for the streaming era continuation. The rest of the Hydra is still on the shelf. So let's do the math the way the audience has been doing it for 10 years. From 1991 through 1999, Bantam published the books that built the Warlord era. Heir to the Empire, May 1991, Timothy Zahn. The X-Wing series, 1996 through 1999, Michael Stackpole and Aaron Alston, 8 novels in the Bantam run. The Jedi Academy trilogy, 1994, Kevin Anderson, 3 novels. Darksaber, 1995, Anderson, 1 novel. The Hand of Thrawn duology, 1997 and 1998, Zahn, 2 novels. Tom Veitch's Dark Empire comics on the Dark Horse side, 1991 through 1995. By the time Bantam's license expired in 1999 and the Star Wars publishing program moved to Del Rey, the EU's Warlord era was a finished commercial arc with documented bibliographic citations. And then Del Rey kept building. The Force Heretic trilogy, the Legacy of the Force series, the Fate of the Jedi 9-novel sequence. Daala returned as a New Republic chief of state in Fate of the Jedi. Pellaeon died on the Bridge of the Bloodfin in Karen Travis's Legacy of the Force novels in 2008. The Warlord era's threads extended through the 2014 cutoff. 40 novels is a conservative count. Some catalogs run higher. Now bring Disney into the room. October 30th, 2012. Disney pays $4.05 billion for Lucasfilm. The SEC filing is on record. The Kennedy era begins. April 25th, 2014. The Lucasfilm Story Group, formed in 2013 under Kiri Hart as development lead and staffed with Pablo Hidalgo and Leland Chee, issues the canon declaration. Everything outside the 6 Lucasfilms, the Clone Wars TV series and film, and the standalone Darth Maul Son of Dathomir comic is retired as Star Wars Legends. 23 years of post-Endor publishing, including the entire Warlord arc, the Lusankya, the Maw Installation, the Sauce Beacon Massacre, the Pellaeon-Gavrisum Treaty, moves to the Legends label. Then, Disney builds a sequel trilogy. The post-Endor faction Disney puts on screen is called the First Order. Its leader is Supreme Leader Snoke. Snoke commands one supervessel called the Supremacy. His apex deputy is General Hux. There are no rival warlord states. There is no Imperial Civil War. There is no Sauce Beacon. There is no Lusankya. There is no Maw Installation. There is no Greater Maldrood. There is no Pentastar alignment. There is no Eriadu Authority. There is no Quelii piracy front. There is Snoke, and there is Snoke's ship, and there is the figure who kills Snoke in The Last Jedi by force-igniting Rey's lightsaber on Snoke's armrest and bisecting him at the desk. Ryan Johnson, December 2017. What did Disney try to give us before that? Chuck Wendig's Aftermath trilogy. 3 novels. Aftermath, September 2015. Life Debt, July 2016. Empire's End, February 2017. Del Rey, edited by Shelley Shapiro, marketed under Lucasfilm's Journey to the Force Awakens publishing program. The Aftermath trilogy is Disney's canon attempt at post-Endor Warlord material. It has Grand Admiral Ray Sloane. It has Gallius Rax. It has Mas Amedda still on Coruscant. It has Operation Cinder. It builds up to the Battle of Jakku, where most of the surviving Imperial fleet is destroyed in a single engagement. And then it ends. The surviving Imperials flee to the unknown regions, off the map, where they reorganize into the First Order under Snoke off-screen between novels. That is the structural difference. The EU's Warlord era was the post-Endor scenario. The Aftermath trilogy is a bridge to the scenario Disney actually committed to filming. Snoke on the throne, the First Order as one organization, the Hydra abolished. Wendig was given the assignment of writing the cleanup. The cleanup ends with the surviving Imperial fragments funneled into Palpatine's contingency plan off-stage. There is no Imperial Civil War in Disney canon. There is no Sauce Beacon massacre. There are no shifting, balkanized warlord states across a 6-year window. The closest Disney came was Sloane and Rax, and Sloane ends the trilogy ferrying a few thousand Imperial loyalists into the unknown regions to await the Snoke instructions. Why did Disney consolidate? The corporate logic is on record. Pablo Hidalgo of the Lucasfilm Story Group has said, when asked about Snoke's backstory, "A good story doesn't have to answer all your questions. You're thinking of a wiki article, which often aren't good stories." That is the explicit Lucasfilm position. The Snoke backstory was not worked out at the time of The Force Awakens. The character was, in J.J. Abrams' words, a story beat. Lucasfilm filled it in later. Strandcast, artificial genetic construct, Palpatine's proxy, through the Rise of Skywalker reveal and the Star Wars book. But here's the structural problem with that defense. The EU did not lack named bench depth. The EU had Isard, Daala, Zsinj, Teradoc, Delvardus, Kane, Harsk, Pelion, and a dozen more warlords by name. The choice between one Snoke and 200 Moffs is not a choice between a clean story and a wiki article. It's a choice between two different kinds of cinematic fall of an empire story. The first is about a single villain inheriting a tidy organization. The second is about an empire balkanizing the way real empires balkanize when their central authority dies. Which brings us to the historical analog the EU was deliberately drawing from. The 1990s Bantam writers, Zahn, Stackpole, Anderson, Alston, were writing in the immediate aftermath of two real-world imperial collapses. The Soviet Union dissolved in December of 1991, 6 months after Heir to the Empire came out. Yugoslavia disintegrated across the early 1990s into the Yugoslav Wars. Both collapses produced exactly the structural phenomenon the Bantam authors were depicting. Warlord states, regional commanders declaring independence, ethnic and political fragmentation, the central monolith becoming a hydra of competing successor states. The wars went on for years. The accounting went on for decades. Some of the successor states stabilized. Some failed. Some merged. Some signed peace treaties with the new central authority. That is what fall of an empire actually looks like, and the Bantam writers were watching it happen in real time on CNN while they typed. Look at the parallels. The Soviet Union had 15 union republics that became 15 independent states in 1991. Several of them, Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, held substantial military assets, including nuclear arsenals. Regional commanders made choices about who they reported to. Some of the resulting states reintegrated under Russian influence within a decade. Some did not. The Imperial Civil War in the Bantam novels runs from 4 ABY to 12 ABY. 8 years of in-universe fragmentation that exactly mirrors the 8 years from the dissolution of the Soviet Union in December 1991 to the consolidation under Putin in late 1999. 8 years of Bantam publishing, 1991 through 1999, covering the same 8 in-universe years. That is not a coincidence. The writers were borrowing the structural template from the newspapers in their hands. And Yugoslavia is the closer parallel still. Yugoslavia produced exactly the warlord state ecology the Bantam authors put on the page. A federation that fragmented into successor states that fought each other for territory, and then sought separate peace treaties with the international community. Slobodan Milosevic ran one fragment. The Croatian state ran another. Bosnia became contested ground. The wars went on through 1995, with international peacekeeping accords signed at Dayton, Ohio, while Stackpole and Anderson and Alston were typing their warlord novels. The 1995 Dayton Accords were signed in November of 1995. Anderson's Darksaber, featuring the Sauce Beacon massacre that consolidates the Imperial Remnant, was published in October of 1995. The writer was finalizing a fictional consolidation of warlord states 1 month before the real-world consolidation of warlord states in Bosnia got signed at an Ohio Air Force base. That is the immediacy of the source material. The EU's warlord era is a 1990s post-Cold War political novel set in space. The First Order is a movie villain. Those are two different categories of storytelling, and the audience has been able to tell them apart for 10 years. Which is where we land. 2 months ago, a single audience comment on Not a Jedi's breakout video crossed 1,100 likes. The text of the comment is on the record. The commenter said an Imperial Remnant functioning more like a terrorist organization could have been really cool. 1,100 likes. The Evil Rebellion comment ran 684 likes. The Daala Isard comment ran 306. The Hydra comment ran 20. Combined, 4 comments on one video carrying more than 2,000 audience signals. And every single one of them is pointing at the same shelf. Not at a fan theory, at the actual shelf in the actual Star Wars section of any used bookstore in North America. The books are still in print. The Bantam paperbacks from 1996 still come up on Abe Books for under $10. Del Rey reissued the X-Wing series in 2023 with the Legends label printed on the spine. Nothing has been suppressed. Nothing has been redacted. Nothing has been pulled off the shelves. Every audience member can read the source material today and verify what was there. The fans rented a billboard in 2016. The Give Us Legends campaign, the fan organization that formed in 2014 to petition Lucasfilm to keep producing in the Legends timeline, raised almost $5,000 to put a billboard up asking Lucasfilm to continue making Warlord-era material. Disney did not respond. Disney was busy with the sequel trilogy. The Force Awakens was already in the can, The Last Jedi was in production, and the Warlord-era books were already retired to Legends. The audience asking for the Hydra was on the wrong side of a corporate calendar that had moved on. That is the part that should bother anyone watching closely. Lucasfilm did not lack the material. They had it on file, in their archives, in their license agreements with Bantam from the 1990s. They had the option to commission a Disney Plus series adapted from the Bantam X-Wing novels, a Wraith Squadron streaming show, a Daala-led Imperial Warlord prestige drama, a Lusankya under Coruscant subterranean thriller. Tony Gilroy did Andor in Disney canon. The infrastructure for adapting EU-style material is operational at Lucasfilm. They have done it for Thrawn. They have done it for Pelion. They have not done it for the Hydra. What was there is the Hydra. 25,000 Star Destroyers, 200 Moffs, 12 named Warlord states by 1999, 8 authors, 40 novels, 2 role-playing game sourcebook editions, 23 years of continuous publication. What Disney put on screen in place of the Hydra is Snoke. 60 seconds of Snoke in The Force Awakens via hologram. 6 minutes of Snoke in The Last Jedi on a throne. 0 seconds of Snoke in The Rise of Skywalker. Only a clone of Snoke in a vat on Exegol, briefly held up for the camera, then discarded. Total Snoke screen time across the trilogy, under 9 minutes. Versus the EU's Hydra. Hundreds of pages, dozens of warlords, named ships, named sector commands, dated treaties, signed surrenders, a Sauce Beacon massacre, a Lusankya buried under a city, a Maw Installation hidden in a black hole cluster, a Bacta war, a Wraith Squadron raid, a Pelion Gaversum treaty, an Imperial Civil War with 8 ABY years of documented chronology. The audience knows what was on the shelf. The audience has been pointing at the shelf for 10 years. The 1,100 like comment is the cleanest single comment indictment of Snoke's existence the channel has, because the commenter wrote it in 19 words and got 1,100 people to agree. Disney had the Hydra. Disney bought the Hydra in 2012 for $4.05 billion. And Disney shipped the man on the chair. 200 Moffs, 25,000 Star Destroyers, 40 novels, 8 authors, 23 years of publication, 1 hidden Super Star Destroyer under Coruscant, 1 Maw Installation, 4 secret Imperial fleets. The empire the EU built collapsed into a Hydra, and stayed a Hydra long enough for the New Republic to bury most of it. Disney bought Lucasfilm in 2012. They consolidated all of it into one ship and called the ship Snoke. The man on the ship died in his chair in The Last Jedi. The Hydra is still in the books, still on the shelf. And the audience has been pointing at the shelf for 10 years.